What illegal things do you do on a regular basis? Before we start with the first story, please hit subscribe and ring the notification bell to stay updated with us. Story 1. When I was in college, parking was $500 a semester, which I couldn't afford. I simply went to class each day until I got a parking ticket. I went online, paid the $50 fine, but kept the ticket. Every time I would park on campus, I would toss the ticket out onto my windshield so that the parking police thought I was already ticketed. This worked for 2 years, $1,000 worth of parking for $100. And then I came out of class one day to find 2 tickets and note that said, "Nice try." Story 2. My university parking tickets are also $50, and the university parking people will ticket you. They are too good at their jobs. However, the city parking tickets are only $13, and no one at the city is good at their job. So I'd park in 2-hour parking and hope for the best. I only got ticketed 2 or 3 times. So less than $50 as opposed to $400 a semester. And I'm at the end of my PhD now, no more classes, so I'm not on campus ever anymore. I saved approximately $5,600 by just letting the city occasionally ticket me. Story 3. When I was younger, me and my sister were driving down the road when we saw a roadkill raccoon. We decided to pull over to see if it was still alive. It wasn't, but it had a baby raccoon trying to cuddle up to it. We felt bad and took him in. He lived with us for about 14 years until he died. Apparently, it's illegal to own a raccoon without a license, but raccoons only live for around 3 years in the wild, so I like to think we gave him a pretty good life for an orphan raccoon, regardless of it being illegal. We live in a small town and regularly took him on walks to the park and stuff. He loved people and sat on my shoulder while I was on a 4th of July parade float. Rip Bandit. Story 4. Coworker had a short relationship and breakup and was obviously depressed about it, so I engaged and asked about it. His comment was, "I just don't understand how to make women feel like I believe that their opinion matters when they always have such stupid life views." I was hoping it was just a weird way of saying he's struggling to treat women equally, so I asked him to talk about it a bit. Didn't misunderstand. To him, men's views are obviously superior, and it's all about simply pretending that women matter, and he was struggling hard to do that. Story 5. When I was a kid, I thought it was normal that we could buy movies the day after they came out from the Chinese lady in the chicken shop. I didn't realize it was a crime until middle school when I told someone my grandma had Avatar on DVD and they said that was impossible since the movie was still in theaters. Story 6. I remember I worked for a couple of Indian folks back in the day and they were boasting about having the new Transformers movies through some download service, and because I wanted to see the movie so bad, I caved and asked them about it. For some reason, I was concerned that surely I would be the one to get in some kind of trouble for it. Anyway, I go home, convince myself to download the movie at around 11 p.m., start playing it just after midnight, and at some point within the next 30 minutes, I hear a loud and urgent sounding knock on my front door after midnight after downloading this video. I tiptoe down and say, "Who is it?" through the door, where they then announced it was the city of police to please open up. What the? I opened the door and they quickly stated there was a break-in at the place I worked at and managed for, that I need to go in to make a statement and check things over. Last time I ever downloaded a movie, first time was enough for me. Story 7. Only marginally related, but when I was 21 or so, I pirated the entire discography of my favorite band. 25 years worth of albums, EPs, live performances, rare B-sides, demos, you name it. The real allure of the torrent file was some super rare tracks, some of which I'd never even heard of, many of which had been recorded on really crappy gear, including some on a literal telephone answering machine. Of course, nowadays it's all readily available online, but this was a decade ago and things were a little harder to find, so I torrented it. Google sent my landlord a cease and desist letter for every single file. It was over 500 songs in all. She was getting emails about it for months. She never let me live it down either. Every time I saw her until I moved, she'd tell me Google had sent her new emails. Story 8. Reminds me of a crazy experience I had back in high school. My parents were out of town for the week and I had the place to myself. After school one day, me and a buddy went skateboarding at a nearby church. It was quicker if you drove behind the Kroger to get to the church than to drive around the... As we drove, we saw a big beer delivery truck with 3 big stacks of beer just sitting there. We decided it was a good idea to park around the corner, pop the trunk, wait for the delivery man to go inside, then snatch a few cases. That's what we did and got away scot-free. We even went straight next door to the church and skated for an hour. Later that afternoon, I'm at home alone, preparing for the big party I was gonna throw with all this free beer when there's a knock on the front door. It's the cops. He says, "Is that your gray Honda out there in the driveway?" "Yeah, we got a report of some kid speeding through the neighborhood and giving a woman the finger when she told you to slow down. Was that you?" I was so relieved they weren't asking about the beer that I was happy to admit that I was speeding and flipped off some lady earlier in the day. Cops told me to slow down in the future and then they left. My party was pretty lame. Story 9. My friend's dad worked on Titanic and had a copy before it came out. But it starts in the present day with the research crew, so when I popped it in the VHS player, I immediately stopped watching and was like, this isn't Titanic, it's just a documentary. Another story. My girlfriend, now wife, worked at Blockbuster Video back in the day, and they would get some sort of pre-sale VHS and DVDs while the movie was still in theaters. She would take them to my apartment, and we thought it was so cool we could watch movies before most people while they were still in theaters. Titanic was one I remember. It would have a message scroll across the bottom that said something like, "Not for sale, only for preview," and I think I even remember a few being in black and white, but we didn't care about that. It was just awesome we could watch it at all. Story 10. Funny story. The last year I did my own business taxes, I cheated every way I could think of, abused the gray area, and fudged my numbers a bit so that I was only going to have to pay $1,200. Before filing, I found out I was going to have to go through a bank audit for a large loan I was applying for, so I paid an accountant to do my taxes. The accountant did them completely legally. It turns out I was owed a refund. After paying the accountant, I still ended up getting a check back from the IRS. Accountants can be worth far more than they charge. Story 11. I have never told anyone about this before, but back when I was 15, 1979, I stole a Datsun 240Z car in my neighborhood. I was walking home from a friend's house one hot summer night, and as I walked by this cool Z car, I noticed a single key sticking out of the driver's door lock. I had always thought that car was cool and thought it would have been a to drive. Well, it was. So I kind of looked around and saw no signs of life anywhere, so I got in and drove it off. It was a super nice car. I drove all around the valley, grew up in This car was too nice to be treated to a joyride, so after a few hours of driving it, I took it back and parked it right back in its parking spot at about AM. I figured it was very unlikely that the owner would even know it had driven, other than it missing about 1/3 of a tank of gas. But I did keep the key, because they would think they just misplaced it somewhere. And I guess that's exactly what they did, because a couple of weeks later I did the same thing. Only this time, it was almost out of gas, so I had to put some in it. Did the second time just like the first time. About a week later I did it again. That time I drove it up to Big Bear Lake because I was dying to drive it on mountain roads. It was a blast, until I stopped at a little gas market to get a snack and bumped into one of my older brother's good friends who knew I was only 15 and didn't have a driver's license or a car, much less a vintage sports car. I can't remember the lies I told him, but knew I was going to be in deep when I got home. I hauled ass back to PS, stopped at 7-Elevens and filled the car with gas and snuck it back into their driveway, took a pen and scribbled out a thank you note and told them that I really loved their car and they really shouldn't leave the key in the door overnight. Oh, and by the way, I filled the tank for you. Thanks. Oh, and my brother's friend, he never said a word to anyone about seeing me. Story 12. Ride an unregistered e-bike that goes 40 miles per hour, 64 kph. No license, no insurance, and no registration for like the past year, and have now have put well over 5,000 miles on her. Even went to an anime expo in Louisiana with it and had no trouble. Where I live, any motor vehicle that exceeds 32 miles per hour must register with the DMV as either an electric motorcycle or scooter. Also rode without a helmet for a few months cause I'm an idiot and helmets are required on motorcycles, which it's my daily life that has saved me thousands of dollars on gas and reg for only about 2,505 months of building it and tweaking everything just right. Still gotta upgrade the battery and brakes. Story 13. As a teenager, my friends and I would trespass through a guy's property so that we could sit near the river and just hang out. We did it 2 or 3 times a week. I'm almost certain the old man that owned the land knew about it and just didn't care, but we never technically got permission to be there. There was a period of time when I first moved out where I would technically loiter in front of my workplace for a little bit. I was carpooling with someone that worked in a nearby business. If I got out earlier than her, I would wait around for that hour in the car. Lastly, the grocery store I shop at sells the best donuts I have ever consumed. These Fruity Pebble ones they have are almost certainly the least healthy thing I eat these days, but they taste like heaven. Unfortunately, the grocery store doesn't seem to have the donuts in the system at the shelf, so I just say I'm purchasing a cookie instead for a drastically lower price. Story 14. At least in my state, maybe the US at large, it's illegal to buy contacts, even online, without a valid up-to-date prescription. My vision insurance covers my annual eye exam for glasses, but not for contacts. Even though they literally get both prescriptions and all measurements from doing the one exam, the optometrist always even tells me that if I change my mind and want the contact one after all, I can call them within 90 days and pay, and they'll send it to me. I wear my current contacts to the exam and they check the fit and how my eyes are doing in them. But the cost for them to give me my contact prescription, just to print out and hand me the information they already have from doing the exam either way, is an additional $112. I am diligent about my eye health, so I go get my annual eye exam promptly every year as soon as I get the notification. But unless my prescription has changed, it's remained stable for the past 4 years in a row. I just edit the dates on my previous contact prescription that was valid to be current, change one digit in the optometrist's office phone number to be wrong, so the online retailer would have to make some small extra effort to verify it that they absolutely won't ever bother to do, and have never had an issue ordering contacts online. I'm doing all the steps I'm supposed to wear contacts safely. I just refuse to pay an extra $100 every year for literally no reason whatsoever. My current vision insurance even covers the cost of ordering my actual contact lenses, which is rare on a lot of vision plans I've had in the past. Contacts are considered cosmetic and not covered, so it's utterly ridiculous that the exam for them is not. Story 15. I used to subscribe to like 4 different streaming services with my roommates. Eventually, I learned about Radar and other similar R&R softwares. My mates and I pooled in money, and now we have a Synology home NAS server with 50+ TB storage. We are slowly buying hard drives with the money that would have been set aside for services, and almost all of the movies we watch are like 100 times better looking than any streaming service would have provided. It only started as a way for us to watch movies that we wanted to, but streaming services have dropped. But now we have a database for the house, backups for albums, Pi-hole, and many other home entertainment and lighting systems being run through it. Best of all, we own that and can move it whenever we want, and aside from the initial setup and the move to a server setup, we never touch that. It updates itself, finds subtitles by itself, and even catalogs by itself, and has cute information packets like Prime Video shows, and we also saw so many featurettes for classic movies. Alright folks, that's a wrap. If you like this, please hit the thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. You can also share your thoughts in the comment below.